Good day, everyone. Thank you for being here on day 3 of the summit of navigating uh, grief and the holidays with love and loss. It is a challenging time for many, and it also brings up a mixture or a concoction of different emotions that sometimes we're not prepared for. And that's what myself and my guests are sharing. And we're continuing to share the conversation of how everything affects them. And I'm so glad that you are here. And I want to give a little bit of a recap for yesterday. Yesterday, our guests, one of the ones that we started off with, of course, was how scary it is to think and feel that grief is going to stay with us forever. It is quite daunting until it becomes something that we walk with. I know in my own journey after my son passed away, that thought that grief was going to stay with me, that it was going to walk with me, actually lifted a heavy burden. It felt more like freedom because then I didn't have to pretend. I could allow grief to show up as it was. I could show up as myself, which isn't that just inspiring? And some of the other tips that we had from yesterday, the guests shared, is carve out part of the day to honor your person. How beautiful is that? And it's also of different ways of when we think of what are we going to be sharing and even how we change our language. Our first guest shared, rather than saying I feel or I am, say I am experiencing. And just that shift takes it away from us feeling heavy in it and just allows it to be what that feeling is without judgment, without giving it any meaning. We allow something to be what it is. And just in case you're popping in for the first time, I'm Maria Belenik, a certified grief educator and bereaved mom whose journey took me from being in limbo for 10 years into walking graciously with grief and actually creating the pillars of care. And care is an acronym that I use. And this is how I personally believe is that we give grace to grief and to ourselves. I know yesterday I made a mention about the movies, or not the movies, I think a TV show that kind of went, in grief, we try to outwit, outmaneuver, outrun, and we find out that we can't because no matter where we are, it comes with us. There is no separation of saying we can take things off of how we're doing things. And not only that, but also giving ourselves the grace to be. How much freedom is there in giving ourselves that grace to not put any pressure on us, to just say, today, I don't really want to celebrate any holidays. I don't want to be around people. I want to be by myself and to be okay with that. We also came across about how no is a complete sentence. I know. It is when I first heard it many years ago, and I've been using it now, and I even teach that. For most of us, we want to over-explain. We want to tell people why we're not doing this, why we can't make it, why we can't, rather than just saying, yeah, it doesn't work for me. No. And just leave it at that. You don't owe anyone any explanations. Your tears don't owe anyone an explanation. And that is something else that we learned yesterday too, about saying, hey, I can cry or I cannot. It's really what works for you. And how does that feel for you? And let's face it, the holidays, we put this added pressure, this added expectation that we're supposed to have this perfection. And as the other guest said, be in the present. Whether it's going outside to say, I'm enjoying the sunshine. I'm going to light a candle and remember my person. Instead of celebrating Christmas, I'm going to move it to next week. And instead, I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm saying that because one of my guests is an avid mountain biker that we're going to be speaking with today. And I thought I would put that in for her because I could see her doing exactly that. Saying, you know what? I'm ditching dinner. We can have dinner another time. And one of the other rituals that a guest shared yesterday is, and this is what her mom had done before she passed away many years, is because they celebrated Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, she kind of went, I'm cooking Christmas Day. Christmas Eve, we'll do takeout. I would never have thought of that. I come from a culture that we're supposed to be cooking Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And to actually say, you know what? No, let's order pizza. Let's order whatever food means something to you. And I love how each guest has shared personally from their own stories. They've shared their person with us. They've shared their vulnerabilities with us. And that is the space that I create for people to come in and to be able to share what is in their heart, what is in their, without any judgment. Because let's face it, we happen to have more negative thoughts and are our own worst critic. We put added pressure on us to make others feel comfortable. And taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's giving yourself compassion. It's giving yourself acknowledgement to say, I'm okay the way I am and who I'm becoming. That, I think, is one of the major aspects I find in grief. We are attempting to be the person we were before loss happened. And no matter how much we want to go back, that does not happen. I always go, I wish I had a magic wand that could give everyone what they wanted and have their person back, or go back to a time when they felt life was good. One of the aspects with this summit is to actually show from a place of grieving, from a place of sadness, we can move forward and have joy. Because joy and sadness can coexist. And this is one of the reasons why I believe in saying carrying love and loss in the same breath. In day one, we also learned from a holistic practitioner that we hold things in our breath, in our lungs. And it is through breath that we have life. It's amazing. It's the most simplest of aspects. Our breath can help us regulate our emotions and can help us be grounded. And I know that is something that I particularly like to do beforehand. So I definitely want to have a few moments of silence for you to either honor your person or someone that you care about. So we'll just have a moment of silence. And as we open up our eyes, or you can keep them closed, let's center on our breath. One of the ones that is a good exercise is called the box. And I'm going to apologize because I do have a cold. I've been struggling with one all week, so it does pop up every once in a while. So let's breathe in for 4, out for 4. Oh, you know what? This is why I need the breathing exercise. So we'll start again. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. And rest for 4. And we can start again. We can do a couple of these because then this kind of grounds us. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Rest. 2, 3, 4. And this just sets the tone for how we get grounded. And so as we start, I always like to say, and this is from my mentor, David Kessler, who I got certified from, is that our heart-centered intention is to come together and meet each other exactly where we are, and not making anyone wrong or right of how they grieve or how they express themselves. And grief needs to be witnessed. And witnessed means to be acknowledged, to be validated. And we don't offer any advice. We're here for conversations. And I want to thank you all for being here and sharing your heart and feelings. Now, my first guest that I want to invite in is Lakeisha Mosley. She's an energetic woman who is a wellness thought leader, mental health advocate, and like myself is on a mission to normalize the conversations around healing, grief, and self-care. And she really highlights for people to be authentic and live their authentic lives. So Lakeisha, I want to welcome you in. I know you've also been struggling with a cold. It's that cold season. Maybe we should start off with addressing that, because part of my question is, because November for me is my son's death day. I don't like calling it anniversary. I'm going to say that off the bat to the audience. Anniversaries are for celebrations. This is my son's death day in November, and I don't celebrate it. I honor it. But I also find around that time is when my body just seems to, I don't know, almost like this build up to that day. And then afterwards, it's almost like it becomes like my immune system isn't as strong.
Yeah, that's very true. First off, thank you so much for the opportunity and the honor to get be able to talk with you and your audience. But that is very true. I think for myself, so I call my parents' death dates their angelversaries because I do in some way celebrate and honor them. But I notice around the holidays, Maria, oh my gosh, my body starts to say, girlfriend, you already know what's coming up. Thanksgiving was one of my mom's favorite holidays. It's where she just did this amazing spread, and my body literally is like, yeah, you probably not gonna have too much fun. So, like, struggling with a cold on top of grief, on top of menopause, just really just does not do your body good. And so I think your body begins to know like when these things are happening, and sometimes you just can't avoid them. They just
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up about Thanksgiving because I know in the US, I'm Canadian, so we already had our Thanksgiving. Not as the bigger production, it seems here. We're a little bit more low keyed. But when you're thinking about having that big spread, what has changed for you now that she is no longer here? Like, do you still keep it or have you altered it in some way?
I completely altered it. I've never understood why my mom did all of that. It was
Mhm.
just me and my two brothers. And then my stepdad, once she got married. But I just never understood like all that work and the pressure and the stress and you're not cutting this right and you're not putting this in right. Like it was just too much. So for me, although I'm a mom, my kids are grown, I have grandkids. We do what we want. Sometimes it's tacos, y'all. Sometimes we may do pasta. We very rarely do the traditional stuff like turkey. I don't like turkey. It's just terrible to me. But like ham and all of those things, we normally don't do that. Me and my kids normally pick our favorite dish. Mine is mac and cheese.
Mhm.
My son's is jam, and my daughter loves cornbread dressing. So normally we pick one and we may add a meat to it. And then we do that. But we really are low key. We're like, we're watching movies. We may go hang out. I'm in Texas. Nothing closes. Okay. Like something's open here. Okay. So we may do that. Or we may go watch a movie. That may be the one or two times out the year that we watch the movie. I feel like I honor my mom more by doing what feels best for me, what feels best for my family, than trying to keep up with the tradition that hell I don't even like anyway.
And I love how you say that, that you do what feels comfortable for you, because you're right. And as you mentioned, your mom put this added pressure on her, almost like we have to make this picture perfect day, because we see it so much in the movies, right? I mean, no matter, even if this one person, all of a sudden, this one person finds all these members of these people that all of a sudden invite them over. I'm like, geez, nobody's ever invited me, but that could be a different story of why. But part of it is also, and I don't know, is it the movies that we put added pressure to it? Is it because we see all the things at the stores, in the movies that tell us all these things, and even in the music, like even social media? I mean, probably when your mom was around, social media wasn't as prevalent, but we still had added pressure from somewhere. I don't know where that somewhere was.
Yeah, that I will say we grew up poor. We didn't even know we were poor until we got older. My brother and I laugh about that now, and I have a much smaller, younger brother. But my brother and I, that are close in age, we're like 5 years apart. We laugh now because we were like, we were poor. We didn't even know we were poor, but my mama just made it happen. I think, Maria, for her, it was giving us a sense of what she felt like we should have because maybe her friends did it. Or again, she probably did see it. My mom was around, like she passed like right before Instagram was available to everybody. You know, when Instagram first came out, you only had to be in college to get on. So Facebook was prevalent. So, she wasn't on any social media, but I think me and my brother like probably showed her stuff of different things, or maybe just talking to people. I think she added that pressure onto herself because we were poor, that she wanted us to have at least these 1 to 2 days out the year where it seemed like we weren't. But for us, we didn't care. We were like dreading, other than being grateful and going to church, we would dread the
Mm,
stuff that's coming up with that holiday.
hmm. And I totally get that. I mean, my parents were immigrants and they came to this country with nothing and built, right? However, my dad had five brothers here. Like him and four other brothers. So there was like the five brothers and their families that got together. Now, Thanksgiving, we didn't really even celebrate back then. And it might have been just our family that never did. I mean, years later, we kind of did. But as you said, we made turkey, not because we really liked turkey, and I'm vegetarian, but it was just because you're supposed to have turkey. Like, I don't know where it was that we were supposed to have turkey. For us, the bigger event was more Christmas Eve and Christmas Day when the whole families. And that's what I find. I mean, now afterwards, as the family gets bigger, everybody sort of separates. However, when I still have it, because I'm like, okay, I know who's missing. Like, it's like you set the table and you're kind of like, okay, the, like that never goes away. Doesn't matter how many years it's been. It's kind of like you kind of, want to say, I wish they were here. I miss you.
That's so true. I love when we first had our initial conversation, how we just talked about like we don't have to do any of this stuff that we don't want to do to make other people feel good. And I think in our grief journeys, that is one of the things we do so much, too much, almost. Like, I'm in pain, I'm grieving, which they could be grieving in their own way. But it was my mama, it was my daddy. So why do I have to show up at your house to eat dry turkey that I don't even like, eat stuff I probably don't even want, just to appease you so that you don't feel away or you don't feel like you're not showing up for me? Like, time cut off for that. I do what I want to do. If I want to invite people over, I do. And sometimes I just want it to be me. No kids, no nobody. Just me and my thoughts. And not because I want to drown in sorrow, but because I do want to honor my parents in a way that maybe you don't understand, or I don't feel like I want to explain to you why I'm honoring them that way.
And I love that because a lot of times we do not give ourselves permission to say, how do I want to show up for my own self? Right? I mean, and I know we had this conversation, and I love how you also, create safe spaces for the healing aspect, because we had this discussion about how healing is a word that at times you either like it or you don't. And I'm using the lines from Survivor. I don't know why. Right now, I'm thinking it's really great for grief. We try, we attempt to outwit, outmaneuver, outrun. And in a way, it fits that word healing, because that is what many of us, I mean, myself included, believed that when we heal, have to forget about our person. Like that means we cannot talk about them. We cannot share about them. And personally, for me, I remember saying, I'm not doing that. So, of course, I rebelled. And by rebelling, it almost forced me to say, I can't move. I'm frozen. Like I'm in limbo because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's so true. I love that. And I think that's why you and I connected very quickly. Is it's not easy to create a safe space, number one, for yourself, but also for others. When you are in my presence, when you are in my community, you are free to scream, you are free to cuss, you are free to throw things. Like, hell, I'm even thinking about doing an axe throwing grief thing here in Houston, because sometimes grief shows up like that. And I think we have conditioned ourselves to make healing look so pretty and so demure, and healing is ugly. I just told a friend today, she was like, girl, I've been seeing you, we haven't really talked. I know, I'm on this really intense grief journey and it's healing me, and in that healing I can't talk to you. I don't have anything to say to you at this. Like, I don't know what to say to you that I think will be beneficial for the both of us. And not that she's done anything wrong, not that she's done anything, like they'll push that narrative on you too, Maria. Like, oh well, you're saying I don't understand. You don't understand what it's like to hear your mom take her last breath. You don't understand what it's like to hold your father's hand and he leave this side of the earth. You don't know what that's like. So I don't expect you to know what that's like. And so I feel like we're releasing them in a way, but they get mad about it. We're healing so that we can be a better version of ourselves, not only for ourselves, but for other people. But they sometimes want to make it seem like we're the bad person because we detach or we isolate. Because there are moments of healing that isolation is necessary.
And I'm glad that you bring it up because there's in anything, there's always this fine balance, this fine line of isolating to honor yourself and to set boundaries, and that isolation where you feel no one gets me, no one understands me. Yeah, right? It's like this constant teeter totter. I don't know. In Canada, we have the teeter totter. I don't know what it's called in the US.
No, that's an accurate, like it's kind of going back and forth because you almost don't know in some instances like how you should be responding to people. You're trying to stay true to self, but as a business owner and entrepreneur, you also understand that there are certain masks or faces you have to show publicly at times. Sometimes I want to burn it all down, Maria, and say F it and let's keep it moving. I'm sad. I'm in grief. But I also understand as a part of this healing process that it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's very hard to look in the mirror and say, your person is no longer here. How do you move forward? When you had plans, when you had ideas. When for me, I got to this place where I felt like, oh, I'm good. I could take care of my mom or my dad. And they're not here to witness any of, those particular things. But we are battling within ourselves sometimes, so much so that we don't have time to be worried about what Jane feel like. Like I know it sounds mean, but we're fighting daily to just keep going.
And I love how you say that. And of course, this is one of the reasons why I think you and I got along. I love your fresh take on things. It's refreshing. You and I are both kind of direct in how because sometimes it's sugarcoating is nice. However, sometimes it's like, does the bandage come off? And it's that place. And especially when we think about it, I mean, we do this all year. And then there's this added expectation on the holidays to all of a sudden it's like, okay, grief now takes a break. And you enter this other world. I mean, as a griever, and I always will say, as a griever, uh, it doesn't matter when your person passed away, because the missing and the longing or yearning, whatever word someone wants to use, doesn't go away because the holidays are exactly the same time all the time. And we know that they're not here. For other people around us, their lives have continued the same. And one of the things that I kind of want to bring up is sort of that green envy. And envy in a sense of, because I was like this, when you see families together, you're joyous for them and sad, and I don't know if it's envy, but it's kind of mirrors because you want your person there.
That's exactly what it is. You are ecstatic that they still have the very thing that you desire, that you want. I toy between Both of my parents died from diseases. My mom died from cirrhosis of the liver. My dad died from brain and lung cancer. It started in the lung and went to the brain. So they died very painful deaths to the end. I would give anything to have them still here with minus the pain. So when I see other people with their parents, and I'm like, oh, like I love that for you because I know what I'm missing. But then there's that twinge, like you say, of envy that's like, man, I wish that was me. Like, I wish it was my mom that was still here, or my dad, or my brother, or whomever it is. I think that you've said it so great. Like it is really envy, and it's not intentional. It's really that deep missing of your person that you really wish that they were here. Oh, and don't let me see somebody that mistreats their parent, and you're like, you want to say to them so badly, like, you should be in my shoes. She get on your nerves so bad, be in my shoes. Well, she's no longer here to get on your nerves. Those kind of things.
Yeah, and it is sort of that aspect of where it's human nature. I mean, I find myself doing that with my mom because I'm her caregiver right now. She's also hard of hearing. And so I will shout at her, and then she'll say, "Why are you shouting?" And I'm going, "Because you don't hear." And when I'm using my normal voice, you will go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then afterwards, do exactly the opposite or do something else. And I'm kind of going, "But you said you heard me." "Well, I didn't hear you because I can't hear." And so,
Right.
like, okay, like, am I being mean? Am I being
No. And I think for caregivers, it's very different. And people can say, oh, well, you're trying to make bridges between the two. It's a very different ball game when you are a caregiver. It is so different. I My brother was the primary caregiver for both parents because they were back in Louisiana. My brother was like, "Hey, you're working. Like, I get it. I made these frequent trips." But it's a different because my brother started grief before I did. He saw the demise of our parents, but separately, of course, they died 10 months apart. But he began to see that before I could see that. Because when I did FaceTime and calls, they put on their best faces for me, whatever the case may be. However, he started that process a lot earlier than me. So I feel like sometimes when he was irritable, or when to others it seemed like, oh, he was being mean, it was like, no, he's dealing with something. He's watching this person who raised him, who changed him, who did all these things for him. Now he's doing those things for them. So my heart goes out. I love caregivers with a different type of love and respect because it's a different ball game of having to care for someone who cared for you, number one, and now you're having to treat them like a child.
And it's true, and I'm glad that you mentioned an illness because sometimes there's nuances to grief of how someone passed away. And also, because I know, like with my son, he had an incurable blood cancer for 11 years. And then his last 3 months, we watched him slowly well, like pass away, sort of aspect, right? Like they get weaker and weaker when they have leukemia. And so that puts an added layer. I don't want to put added pressure, but it's an added layer and added stress when someone has an illness. And I know yesterday we had a guest whose parent had Alzheimer's, who had Alzheimer's for 17 years. And yeah, and you slowly watch them forget you. So there's aspects like different layers. And I go, the layers are like onions. Sometimes these onions are thick layers where we see them, and other times we almost miss that layer because onions have that like thin, very, that very thin layer.
That's true. Oh my gosh, I love how you just said that because we do miss some very integral moments because we are looking for these big wows and pows and big things and those little bitty moments, but we remember them after their passing. So I remember when the day that my mom passed away, I had just talked to her that morning, like 20 minutes before I got the call that she was non-responsive. But I remember her sounding so clear. And she was like, "Oh, I ate my breakfast. I ate all of my breakfast." So to someone who's like, "Oh, and she ate all her," well, yeah, she did. She has cirrhosis of the liver, which means nothing's processing. She's on heavy morphine, where they're trying to keep you awake but not to slip into death. Like it's a whole thing that they're trying to do. And to me, it was like, oh well, that's good. But it just passed by me, Maria, like, okay, whatever. And then I get this call, and life that as I knew it, changed forever within 2 hours after that first call. But then when I began to recall my mom, I'm like, oh, that was a moment. She was proud of herself that she was able to walk to the bathroom by herself, that she was able to eat breakfast fully, and not realizing that that was the last supper for her, not realizing that the last thing she kind of said to me before she said, I love you was, I'm like, oh, well, mom, I'm going to come see you before you leave. And she was like, no, I'm going home. And it was the way she said, I'm going home. Like now, that was one of those little thin onion layers you talked about that I just passed by, like, oh, well, she's going back to Alexandria because she was in New Orleans at that time. Oh, she's going back to Alexandria. But now I hang on to those thin layers, as you call them, because they make this grief journey just a little bit more because she told me she was going home. Now, she was not the physical home that I thought she was talking about, but for her, it was somewhere else. So, those really thin pieces, they are so important. We really should start documenting them.
And that is definitely a good idea because I know there are people who start filming because one of the aspects that, I mean, I didn't have the opportunity and one, I didn't even think about it, um, is of course taking more photos and also recording the voice. Because as longer time goes by, I mean, I have photos of my son, all right, and I'm sure you're going to have photos of your mom at a certain period. Like, I mean, my son is forever 27. And so, because I won't, don't have photos afterwards. And we never took photos of him when he was really ill and becoming skeletal. And that was because he did not want it. And that was to honor his. Sometimes their last moments, and also their their smiles. And I for me, I'm always thinking, oh, it would have been nice to have a recording of their voice.
Yeah, and that's hard, Maria, because that final moment means a lot. And I didn't understand. You really just brought something full circle. My brother took a picture of my mom when she had passed and she was in her hospital bed because he actually made it there in time. Um, well, not in time. By the time he got there, she had really just passed, but it was a moment that I deleted that picture when he sent it. I'm like, I don't want to see her. She looks sleeping, but it marked the end of my life as I knew what it was. But I think if we do have those moments, like we can still honor them, probably never show them publicly, but they're just a piece of us that we have that, like that we can remember. Because I look at some pictures now, like when my mom went into the hospital of my kids, like they were big on Snapchat then when my mom was sick. This is like back in 2015. And so there are pictures of my kids where they took pictures of their grandmother. They called her Momo. and they were like, Mama, keep fighting or whatever. And I can see the tear stains in their eyes. Their eyes are red. But my mom is smiling in this picture like she's in it with her grandkids. It's moments like that when I wonder, like, why, God? I can look at that picture and in its final moments, it's like probably a month before she passed, but she was happy. My
Mm.
kids were sad, maybe, but they were happy because they were there with her and she took that picture with them. But I think those final moments, sometimes as painful as we remember the details, are like really just as important as documenting any of the other times, too.
And I love how you said that because we document. Well, actually, who was it? I heard a story one time. You know how, especially with the holidays, Christmas time, um, people want to get the perfect photo, right? It's like we got to get the perfect photo because we got to send it out. And I remember someone sharing, going, they had a friend who had done that. And their friend had said, "Do you know how long and how many arguments we had to get that perfect photo?" And I'm going, that is so true. We're wanting to present this thing of we have the perfect family, the perfect emotions, or whatever, the perfect holiday. And yet, behind the scenes, it's messy. And sometimes maybe it's those messy photos, like that photo that you have with your mom being happy and your children being, I mean, they're both sad and happy that they're staying, seeing their grandmother, but sad because they know that she's ill. But these are moments that become precious. And at the time, we don't think about it because we're looking at the photo going, oh crap, like one person's smiling and the other two aren't. Uh,
That's so true. And when you think about the messy moments of just life, what is the lesson you learned in that? What did you get out of that? Because nothing's worse than trying to get 2 year olds to take pictures. Okay. I got a 2 year old granddaughter and she is the cutest thing in the world to me. Okay. She is just my little darling. And I'm like, come on, take a picture with Sassy. They call me Sassy. And I'm like, come on, take a picture. And she's looking there, she's looking there, she's looking there. But it is a moment I won't forget because that's my grandbaby who I'm trying to get to take a picture. And sometimes it's the laughter that comes from those pictures when you look back on them. Like, I love doing behind the scenes type things because sometimes we see the finished product, but what did it take to get there? Look at the ebbs and flows, the messiness of grief. Like, we can sit here on this amazing event and talk about grief in ways that maybe other people can't relate. But there were days I would be in the corner crying, screaming, throwing plates at the wall, asking God why He took my parents, hating life. It's those messy moments that get me to a place where I can talk about it and be proud about it and not and unapologetic that I don't grieve how everybody else grieves, that I don't want to be a part of your pity parties when it comes to certain things. And I don't want to do balloon releases 5 years later when somebody has, like, I don't want to do it. And I'm okay with that. Thank you.
and that's
Thank
real.
you for that.
And thank you, Zach. And it's so true. And this is one of the reasons why, because our experiences with grief are different, and how we experience it, how we express it. There isn't a right or wrong way, there's no cookie cutter way. And I think that's what we need to give permission of, is saying it's okay. And Lakeisha, I do. I love having conversations with you. And I know we're going to have more.
Yes,
Right?
definitely.
There's like many layers that we haven't even touched upon because we're going to touch
Right.
upon in like 30 minutes. Uh,
Right.
but one of the things that I do want to leave you with
Thank you,
are,
Sandra.
thank you, Sandra, is what tip would you like to give the viewers?
I want us to grieve unapologetically the way we want to, whether it's messy, whether it's pretty, whatever it looks like. Give yourself permission to do that. Whatever it is that you have to do it your way. Your loved one would want that. They really would. Instead of telling me my loved one wouldn't want me to be sad, tell me my loved one would want me to show up unapologetically how I am supposed to be, how they raised me to be, how they knew me to be. I really want us to start grieving out loud and being okay with it.
Oh, I love that. Grieving out loud. Whoa. You and I are going to start a movement.
Yes, yes, let's do that.
Well, Lakeisha, I thank you so much for being the fresh breath of air almost, right? To
Thank you.
just lay it out there, be vulnerable, and being you. Thank you so much. I appreciated you being here.
Thank you so much for the honor. I am so glad I am here. I'm going to hang out with my camera off because this is amazing. But thank you just for the space. Thank y'all who all are here. Just thank you for the space that you created for us to be able to be this way. Because if no one creates this space, we don't always be brave enough to do so. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And now I want to introduce my next guest. I know I did say that she loves mountain biking. I already know that. But one of the other things that Sandra Pelly and I have in common is our love of dragons. But she has taken it a step further than I did because I only like dragons. So Sandra Pelly, who is the Sandini, I almost feel like she's going to put dragons out like this magician. She's an inner dragon transformative specialist. She inspires what's next for women doing the inner work to connect to their inner dragon, to be bold, aligned, and live an authentic life. Sandra, welcome.
Hello. You look beautiful, by the way, Marie.
You.
I just wanted to say that, I've been sitting here holding space for the two of you, the previous guest speaker, Lakeisha, and yourself. And um, thank you for giving me permission to grieve in my own way, is what I really first want to say. Because, um, yeah, it's weird to feel like you have imposter syndrome when it's around grief. And yet that's kind of where I'm sitting because it's like, oh, I haven't lost anybody really close. Like I haven't lost my dad. I haven't lost a child. I haven't lost a sibling. Having said that, I've lost my mother-in-law. I've lost my brother-in-law. I've lost some really close aunts and stuff. And this conversation just really opens up the possibilities of being okay with who I am in my grief. And I really, really appreciate that. So I just really wanted to honor the two of you, first of all.
Well, thank you so much. And you're right. And part of it is that sometimes when we think of loss and grief, most people believe it has to be the death of a person. And it's not because we can grieve. Yesterday, we had, as I mentioned beforehand, one of our guests whose father had Alzheimer's for 17 years. So it was a slow journey of each day there was a different loss. And
Yeah.
so I know that that is something that you're also going with, right?
Yeah, very much so. My mother has dementia, and again, I refer back to the previous conversation and a comment that was made about something that was said. And I remember being in my stepdad's home, and my mom sitting in a chair by the door, waiting for her husband to get the car because we were taking her to the hospital. She'd had a fall, and we had reached a point where we just couldn't we were no longer capable of taking care of her in the home. And she turned to me and she goes, I just feel so lost. And in that moment, I'm like, oh, it's okay. I just kind of like I could just feel the energy of how I just sloughed it off in the moment, except that she was telling me something so, so important in that moment about her dementia.
Mm.
And there's no way to backtrack and reclaim that moment. So there's that grief and whatever emotions are coming around that as well. And then, the other day I was walking through my space in my bedroom, and there's a picture on my husband's side of my mother-in-law and her husband. And she's just got this beautiful smile on that. And I just recall, like there's been conversations over the last few days about people who are in the home and are witnessing on a day-to-day basis the decline of someone. And truly, with regards to that, we didn't even realize there was a decline because it was my father-in-law and my mother-in-law were living by themselves. They weren't in a home. There were family members who were visiting, but they weren't visiting and spending time. They were dropping in and making sure that they had groceries and just touching base and then leaving. They weren't sitting in the home and taking that time. And so that the people with dementia or people with whatever else is going on, like your son, they have such ability to mask what is actually going on in their life. And when my husband had the opportunity to go and sit with his dad while sit with his mother while his dad had to go in for an operation, he spent 2 or 3 days there. And it was a huge eye opener of what was actually going on. And so when I pass by this picture of my mother-in-law, it's this smiling face that I see of her and the remembrance of who she was versus who my husband got to see in that moment and moving forward from there. And it's just like visiting my mom in the dementia, like the long-term care now. I grieve on a daily basis around her energy. I
Yeah.
can't pick up the phone, just like those who are grieving people who are actually departed from earth.
And it's so true because a lot of times we don't see how, because it's a different nuance of grief that people don't see because they kind of go, well, they're still alive, right? People give that, and I know we had one guest that kind of go, never start a sentence with at least. And we hear that so much with people that have parents that are aging that have this illness where it's forgetfulness. I know with my mom, I mean, I'm her caregiver because I live with her and I'm not taking her out of her home because that is what she knows. But it's also that point of saying, okay, but I can see the slow declining. And I see it. And sometimes I think, I don't know if others do, but one of the things, and I took a picture of it because I was taking a picture of something. There was some Christmas decorations. So I was taking it, and all of a sudden she goes, oh, let's take a picture together. And it was like, wow. And then, of course, she was complaining about she didn't look good. And I thought, you know what? No, it's a good picture. But it's one of those things that I'm like, say yes to the opportunity when it arises. Because I don't know. I mean, she has this saying all the time, I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. Well, none of us do. However, that is her thinking. But again, I mean, I want to bring it back to the holidays because, of course, I mean, Sandra, you and I are both Canadian, so we don't have to worry about Thanksgiving. However, December is coming up, and that's then where we think of the Christmas time and maybe what was. I mean, I know that you celebrated sometimes, I think, with your in-laws also, and even with your mom, and with your mom being in a home, that adds a different dimension of what traditions look like. Do you want to speak on that? Like, what changed for you? Like, what traditions did you maybe keep? Did you have to adjust? Did you kind of say, crap this all together, I'm doing something different?
Yeah, it's so interesting that we're having this conversation. I was truly thinking of all of this literally this morning. And my daughter has the good fortune actually of living in my father-in-law and mother-in-law's home. He is now in a home himself. You know that I've lost my mother-in-law in October of last year. Uh, the that it's now, like I'm like, oh, we should get the family here, we should get the kids here. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, that that is a lot of movement of people that may have an inability to move as freely as my husband and I do. And so shifting that perspective of, you know what, let's do things maybe the week before Christmas as our family unit and invite Paul's sister, my husband's sister, invite my father-in-law back to his own home like we did last year and celebrate Christmas there before Christmas. And I really like the idea of this as well because it's more about getting together as a family unit than it is of actually having it maybe on that specific day because of the nuances of what that specific day actually means versus the modernizing and materializing of what Christmas is, correct? And two is we are then also too leaving the space for those grandchildren of ours to be celebrating in a different way in other family circles as well. So we're honoring everybody in doing this. And I feel like it's such a powerful position to be in when we can do this versus saying, no, you guys, we haven't had anybody here for 8 years. You guys need to come here. Wow, is that ever already producing negative feelings? So I love that you're broaching the subject of recognizing the traditions are okay to be changed. They're truly okay to be changed. Yeah.
And that's the aspect that I always go, people need to give themselves that
Yeah.
grace to say, because sometimes we feel, or people feel that traditions cannot be changed, right? It's almost like a ritual that cannot ever be changed. And sometimes it's like, yeah, circumstances can change. So give yourself that permission to say it's okay to do something different. And
Yeah.
I love how you and your family have shown that and have adapted in a way that is right for you and your family.
Yeah. And you can do other things as well, like um depending on I don't even know how to word this. I'm going to use my daughter's wedding as an example. She when she got married, her best friend was had committed suicide a couple years before and was unable to be there. Obviously, having said that, she invited his dad and his new wife, and I had also said, you could always do an honorarium area with him, and she made a really good point of saying, well, this is my celebration about my getting married. I don't really want to change that to being in honor of him specifically. I am honoring him and having his dad, who I know, and his new wife there. And it's the same thing with Christmas or any occasion, right? Like if they're not there, be consciously aware of, okay, you know what? It would be a really great idea if we had grandma's picture up. Let's make sure that she's present right now or whatever other relative and consciously aware of where the dynamics of all of that take place because maybe you don't want the like my brother-in-law's picture there, like it's just being very conscious that even though this celebration is about you, there are other people around to honor as well, and we can do our own celebration in our own spaces as well, like at Christmas time put the pictures of them in ornaments or around the tree, whatever the case is, right? Rather than front and center.
Mm-hmm. Because, and I love that, because in some ways it fits into the category of setting boundaries.
Yeah.
What you will allow for your own self and your families, rather than having someone else dictate what it's supposed to be like. And it is a fine balance. I know when you happen to be the griever, or even when you're having people that are missing but are still alive, it makes it a little bit more drawn out because one of the things, and I know we had one guest that went, we can't worry about what everyone else's feelings are because then we're going to be even more of a mess and put more stress on ourselves. You have to do what's right for you and make that comfortable. And if you're okay and say you're in a joy-filled place, kind of say, today I'm in a good place and I want to celebrate. Or if you're not, kind of go, you know what, today's one of these days where it's going to be low key. And either one is going to be okay. And I love how you say that, you have days where you have with your own family, and then afterwards you can move dates around. I mean, I know Christmas always falls on the 25th, but hey, the 25th sometimes is a little different if you're in Hawaii maybe, or in, what the time frame is, right?
Yeah. I also want to say that remember how you have felt in the past when you maybe haven't been able to get together with family during Christmas occasions, and make a point of getting together with family for a Christmas occasion. Again, it doesn't have to be on the specific date. It's more the fact that you're getting together. I'm just very conscious of like I'm conscious that the last time my granddaughter was here in my home for Christmas, and it wasn't this home's per se, but it was like 8 years ago. Does she have to come to my house for it to be a celebration of Christmas? No, not at all. Not at all. There was something else I wanted to say. It's eluding me. Just bear with me here a second. I think it was exactly that. It was more about um, my mother-in-law often would ask us in, and we would come and be there for Christmas, like Boxing Day. We'd make sure that we spent the day with Boxing Day in there because we had time with my dad here. We made a choice to live in this town to be with my dad. So honoring that and then going and doing the next thing with them, or doing it before with them. Just really being so very conscious that there's a lot of different ways to do things. And you said it really powerfully, is honoring yourself. And I want to take that a step further too, Maria, because it's not just honoring yourself in that, recognizing the emotions in that. It's when you're setting up a Christmas event, is make it for yourself so that you can celebrate in the way that you feel comfortable, and you can celebrate whoever you darn well want to, and other people can adapt to you or not come. And that's on them instead of yourself.
I like that. I like making yourself comfortable. And then it's so true. One of the things I believe that we forget, we only have control over our own selves. We do not have control over what someone else says or what their feelings are going to be. And many times, sometimes as a griever, we believe that we have to look after our feelings and the feelings of everybody else. And we don't. Everyone has to look after their own feelings. Everyone's responsible for their own well-being. Unless, of course, they're a child. That's completely different. Like your 2-year-old granddaughter. But as an adult, yeah. And that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sandra.
Yeah. It's also to acknowledging that another person actually has feelings. We had an event happen that was quite joyous recently, and within the week or even the day, a couple days, we actually found out it was a tragedy. And one of the family members actually said something about give us the space to acclimate to this by ourselves right now. In other words, don't reach out, just let us be for now. And I had an opportunity to see one of these family members recently. And when I hugged them, I let them know that I have been thinking of them, so that they knew that I wanted to pick up the phone and call, that I wanted to reach out, and that I was honoring boundaries that had been set as well. Right. And because it's not about me in that case, it's about the person who's going through it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going through it as well in a different way. it's we all have our crosses to bear, I guess you could say, right?
Well, we all have, as you say, like, I mean, there's the expression different crosses to bear or our own struggles. And we don't see anyone else's struggles. We only know our own. And it comes from our own perspective, not from anyone else's. One of the things, and I know that you've experienced, is, of course, the town where you grew up, right? And for the audience to know, you're just outside of Jasper.
That's correct.
And so Jasper had a huge fire, and is it 2 years now?
Yes, 2 years. It's a year and a half, actually.
Yeah, right. And so that, and that's why grief is so many layers. It means so many different things, because that is another layer of grief, that it may not be the grief of a person, but it's also a grief of our identity in where we might have grown up, in our childhood homes, in things that I know sometimes we always go, we're not supposed to be materialistic, but however, we attach meaning to some things, to some items. And when they're gone, it's that other layer. I mean, again, going with the onion sort of thing, right? I mean, onions have many layers, and so does grief.
Yeah.
And I know one of the ones that I had done in my talk when I was in Oxford is actually saying that because we have experienced grief once or loss, doesn't mean that loss will never come again. We experience losses that sometimes come one after the other, and it's a ripple effect.
It's also finding the token item that may help you to move through that grief. And that's really important as well. In the town of Jasper, when it burned, many people I know lost their homes, and every single iota of items. A woman at the end of the block, I grew up with her sons and her daughter. Her son went to pick her up to get her out of the house, and all she grabbed was a box of bills that was beside the door because she couldn't even think straight. Lost every iota of everything she owns other than this box of bills, which, I mean, how important are the bills, right? Anyway, I digressed just slightly. In my mom's dementia journey, my stepdad is also preparing the house for the eventuality of what's going to happen with him. And in that, I brought home all kinds of items that my mom had that I had witnessed her purchasing growing up. And some of these were Pendolphin bunnies. Some of you may be of an age that you know what I'm talking about, and some of you may not have no idea what I'm talking about. These Pendolphin bunnies, she was quite the collector, and I literally probably brought home about 30 or 40 of these bunnies, and they range in size from palm size to significant size. And I reached out to the Jasperites on one of the Burn Facebook groups and said, hey, you know what? I have these Pendolphin bunnies, and I would love to gift them to whomever out here that would have lost their collections, etc. And I had like 4 or 5 different people reach out and say, "Oh my gosh, I would love to have this one if you've got this one. I would love any of them." My the woman who lived next door to me, her daughter passed away a number of years ago. Someone that she really felt I was her mentor. She's 10 years younger than myself. This young lady that passed away, and she took one of the Pendolphin bunnies in memory of my mom and her daughter, right? The loss of her daughter. So it's finding those token items that help us on a day-to-day basis as well.
That and the opportunity to be able to support someone else in their pain, right? To
Yeah.
do that. And it's so true. We don't need a lot of items, and sometimes we can even bring that item in to be included as part of the tradition in the holidays, right?
Very much so.
To have that, like to have it displayed somewhere. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is, and the holidays bring up, I mean, so much. And I know, Sandra, you're also a shaman, and I want to give you a pitch for that. Because part of what you do is you do the release work.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I always, because some of this language may be similar, because I know I always go, what's next? Because that's sometimes in grief, that's what we're going. And sometimes we're like, okay, the holidays are coming. And then with the new year, all of a sudden people will go, okay, now what's next? Right? It's dread and anticipation mixed up together, but we don't know what the anticipation is because we're dreading something.
I want to go off in a really interesting direction here because I know we're short on time, and I want to get this in as a gift to the listeners. Maria, you mentioned that I'm a shaman. I want to offer you guys this idea, this way of thinking. Okay, what I love to do is in my heart and my thoughts is create a sacred garden. So what you do is you take a moment to think of a beautiful space in your heart and in your mind. Like maybe it's a garden, maybe it's a bench, maybe it's a special place that you've been to. And you invite that loved, passed away one into the sacred garden to have a conversation with. Okay? It's very simple. You're very capable, each and every one of you, of doing something like that. And you may even just naturally fall asleep because of it. And if you fall asleep, know that you are still in conversation with that beautiful passed away loved one. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you so much for that gift, Sandra. That is beautiful. And it is. And I know that I think many of the audience people will take that up because it is a gift and it comes from the heart. Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
It is. And one of the things I always go as a grief coach, silence is okay. We become comfortable in silence because silence is a form of communication. It is also a form of support. To be able to sit with someone in silence. Um, I was going to say, I practice this because many times I would sit in the hospital room with my son in silence. So that way he just had to know that physically I was there and emotionally I was there for him. I didn't need to speak to him. He didn't need to speak to me. So support can also come by sitting with someone in silence and holding their hand and having that communication. And Sandra, and I thank you so much for being my guest, for saying yes, for sharing parts of your story and being vulnerable, and for the gift that you gave us of the garden. So good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everybody.
I want to, my next guest. Wow, I know I have so interesting guests. It's like I want to keep these conversations going, and we'd be here all day. Like I would have all day with people all the time. And I don't know if you'd want to be a fly on the wall to hear these conversations. But my next guest, Jessica Roden, is founder of Root and Rise Grief Healing. And she's also a certified grief educator by the renowned David Kessler, who is a trauma and grief specialist. I know I'm putting a plug in for David too, and he's not even here. But we were all educated by him. So in a lot of ways, he is here with us because we are framing a lot of the words that he has given us. Thank you so much, Jessica, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love your things at the back. Oh, the tree.
Oh yeah, thank you. I put some, favorite things and just, things I like. So I have a background that I like.
Well, that's actually what kind of matters. And I'm an art lover, so I always go. I mean, I can walk into a house and the thing I will notice is people's art.
Yeah, that's nice.
That sort of, and I know, and I love the Root and Rise.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, maybe let's do a deep dive on that because
Sure.
in some ways you're kind of I'm thinking like the root is that, in grief is the root and then we rise from it. That's what I'm visualizing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, correct me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not incorrect. I feel, and especially in, my grief journeys and losses that I've had, I feel that you have to sort of get grounded and be with your grief, acknowledge it before you can take those steps to move forward. Because if you don't acknowledge your grief and, you can keep ignoring it, right? But you need to get grounded, rooted in it, and realize what it is and what it's trying to tell you so that you can rise up and move forward and start to heal. So that's sort of where that came from. And I've always like I have a tree logo and a tree behind me, and I love the idea of like being rooted and the strength of the earth and just all of that. So yeah, so that's sort of where that came from.
Mm-hmm. And it is because I mean, I know we're talking about grief and loss, and it is a personal journey, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we hear the line, loss is universal, and we know that. And I go, and grief is personal because it is the different relationships, and it's like a fingerprint. And in that aspect, so is really the holidays. I mean, when we think of Christmas, okay, Christmas in some ways is universal, right? For certain countries.
Sure.
How they celebrate is going to be different. And in each home and each person is going to actually, they're going to put their own twist on it and make it personalized. So when we think of that, especially when we're thinking of the root and rise, how do you find that the holidays fit in, or like what have you altered? I love the word altered. I've been using altered rather than tradition.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, it's definitely very personal, right? Because even two people in the family who've had this same loss. I mean, like siblings having a parent loss, like even that loss, they both had different relationships with the person. And so their grief is going to be different. Their own process and, how they move forward is going to be different. And for me, so I I definitely, it took me a long time. Like I lost my mom 20 years ago. Her date was in October. So it was 20 years ago this year. And it was before I was married, before I had kids, all of that. And it was sort of a weird transition time because I didn't really have any new traditions established yet. And we were still doing our family traditions that we grew up with. And, over the years, like I have created new traditions for my family, my kids, like because they never got to know her. So, it's something that like with my family now, trying to incorporate some of those same traditions. Baking the same cookies, using the same recipes. At Christmas Eve was always like little frozen appetizers, and so that's what we do. And yeah, so I think it's, and I think as some of the other guests have said, I mean, especially, the holidays can just be so hard. And, I think each individual really needs to just see what works for them. And it changes year by year. I mean, especially when you've had many years between a loss, like every year is kind of different. Like some years you might feel more festive and other years, maybe not so much. And you just want to lay low. And I'm surprised, like, since it's been so long, like how it just changes every year. So,
And I love how you brought that up about the length of time. Because sometimes when we hear the word grief, people assume it's recent.
mm, mm,
And I know I describe myself at times as a grieving mom. And
mhm,
people will go, oh, so it's recent. Or if I say child, right? Because it's my son, my child. So
right,
they
right.
have this thing about, oh, it's a small child. And I'll say, no, he was 27, right? And
Yeah.
like yourself, I mean, it's 16 years now that he has passed away.
Mhm,
And there's that aspect where I look at my other nephews, they were younger. They
mm,
remember him, but I look at that memory sometimes fades.
yeah.
I look at my grandson, who will never know his uncle. And so then it becomes, what do we do to incorporate that,
Mhm,
have the people who've never met them?
yeah. 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 I mean, for me and with the kids, like I've always referred to her as Grandma Sharon, and any opportunity, and I've got pictures like around, and we do celebrate her birthday. We have a cake and we sing happy birthday. And, when it's her anniversary, I know you don't like the word anniversary, but like when it's the death, date, the angelversary, I think that's what Lakeisha said. So I actually like that. But yeah, like, we recognize it, but even just like day to day, like when I'm like telling stories or something, reminds me, I'm like, oh yeah, Grandma Sharon's favorite dessert was key lime pie, and maybe we should have key lime pie, and like so. And we go to the cemetery. Like I don't live where my parents live, so I'm in Maryland now, and they're in Connecticut. So when we go to Connecticut, though, we'll go to the cemetery, and so like I try to make her a part of their lives too, even though they never really met her. So I'm very intentional about it.
And I love that because a lot of times, especially when it's long term, there's the assumption again that, oh, you just kind of forget, you ignore them,
Right.
you don't bring them up.
Yeah.
I'm sure you hear that all the time. Why are you mentioning her? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always go, what people misunderstand is that when someone is significant in your life and has made an impact, they are unforgettable.
Yeah. I mean, they're part of you.
Well, of course, yeah, right? As a parent, as a child,
Yeah.
their DNA sits.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, they're part of your story. Like, even I mean, like your story changes when they die, right? But like they were part of the before and you still carry them with you into the after, like even if they're not there.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. And in the sense of, as grief educators, we are leaning into how do we share these stories of people that
Hmm.
are no longer here
Yeah.
or are, experiencing an illness.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that that's what you're finding too. And one of the things is that, because I know yesterday we had someone whose friend had passed away. She had a really close relationship,
Mm.
friend, and that is her lane, right? So, because I always go in grief, we seem to have our lanes
Yeah. Yeah.
of where we go. I mean,
Hmm.
mine is more for adult child loss. Um, the lady yesterday, Terry, was more for friendship, because a lot of times we don't see grief in friendships when they pass away.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of those griefs that people don't really recognize as significant, right? I mean, there's so many types of grief that sometimes people, I don't know, brush aside if they haven't experienced it, right? Like pet loss is one that comes to mind. And, you know, when I lost our dog, our first dog that my husband and I had when we were married before we had kids, I mean, it was so hard. It was just like, you know, like losing like a child, but not, I mean, not, but they're like a part of the family. Like they're a baby of yours, like your fur baby, like, and they give you this unconditional love and like, like it's real. I mean, it's real for people. And sometimes those pets are just the only family that some people have, you know?
Or even closer to than a family.
That's true. Cause right. Cause sometimes, yeah, they're not connected with their family members, right?
And that's one of the aspects, and I'm glad that you brought up pet loss, because that is sometimes a person, especially over the holidays. Because I know one of the guests mentioned that actually December is the highest month where people pass away.
Really?
Why? I didn't look that up, but someone else had mentioned it. And one of the things I always go is that sometimes our pets, as you said, are our families. And when a pet has passed away, traditions can change too, and how people feel, but
Yeah.
people will not understand when a pet has passed away, how
Yeah.
they're going to be carrying on and what kind of support do they need.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things is, so what helps you feel grounded? Like, say, I mean, in parts of it, like the holidays always have added stress. I think you have younger children or teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. Teen and tween. Yeah.
And so there is, so how do you find that you're grounded during the holiday season where
Yeah.
there's so much pressure to do different things?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and especially when you have children or
Yeah.
teens, they're all over the place too,
Right. Yep.
right? And also honoring yourself and say, because
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, like, say, I mean, there are times when I feel that the missing is more intense
Yeah.
than other times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like all
Definitely.
of a sudden I'm asking this question where it's like this whirlwind of emotions where you're
Yeah.
mom, you got to be here for your kids, here for home life or work life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's kind of like, but I want space to honor who I'm missing.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, and like you said, like, yeah, there's definitely times where, you have those like grief bursts and it just comes out of nowhere, right? And, like this year's been particularly hard because it's the 20-year mark, which, seems like so significant. I mean, there's been, there was sort of certain years that, like 5, 10, like, sort of like those significant years. And it's been hard. And even for Thanksgiving, like we're going back to Connecticut and I'll see my dad, and he's been remarried, and it's just yeah, so it's hard. So for me, like I think one of the most important things is just communicating what you need. Because people won't know and they won't know to ask. So I think like it starts with just being open and honest and saying, hey, like, this time of year is hard for me, or I'm having a hard time today. I can't do that today, or, I just need a little space, or, I think it's like about also just being really specific in what you might need. Like if someone invites you to something like a party and, you may want to go, but you're not really sure. I mean, just say like, I might check it out, but I might need to leave early if I'm, not feeling great, or, feeling emotional and all of that. Or, yeah. And like with the kids, like I have always been open and honest too. And just, let them know like, oh, I'm feeling really sad today. I'm really missing Grandma Sharon today or something. And, um, so I think it's important to just have that like open communication, and lean on your support system, right? Like your family or friends or whoever it might be. I mean, I know a lot of people don't always have those at the holidays, but it could be a church, it could be community members, neighbors, anything. But accept the help, and say like, oh, you could use some help with this. And right, because the holidays can just be so overwhelming. And there's that expectation like, oh, I should be feeling happy and joyful, and I'm not. And I think that brings in a lot of self-criticism and self-judgment. Like people are hard on themselves instead of giving themselves grace. So yeah, like, or I should be feeling differently, the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and all of that, right? um but yeah, I mean, I think it is like first and foremost like just about communicating those needs, and also just honoring your needs too. I mean, so if you think you need something, whether it's a quiet holiday by yourself, whether it's going somewhere, whatever it is, like, I think a lot of I think one of the things within the grief work that we do, I think, is like empowering people to do this. Because of the way grief and loss is viewed in our culture, and, you know, just to get over it, move on, right? Like to empower people to feel comfortable slowing down and meeting their needs, right?
Hmm. And that is so true. And especially when, as you said, I mean, when someone is alive, we mark milestones.
Yeah.
Like when we think of a child, it's the first year, second, or the fifth, and the same
Right.
thing with anniversaries, right? There's these
Yeah.
milestones and there's the
Yeah.
expectation on things. And I love how you brought that up because the world assumes because it's 20 years, all of a sudden I mean, and I don't know if you have people telling you this, like, wow, are you still stuck?
Right. Yeah.
Why are you still in that?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
it happened so long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There is absolutely. I mean, I think people close to me understand, but there's definitely, yeah, like a perception that, oh, like it's been that long, like you shouldn't feel anything anymore or something, right? Um, I think some people just haven't had like a profound loss, and like that, years, like years. And even like when it first happened, like I didn't really know anything about that level of grief. Like I was in my 20s, I was, and even when it happened, I was just felt like, oh, I just have to get back to it. I've got to go finish what I was working. I was like in grad school, and it was just like, I just got to go do it. That's what I'm supposed to do. And, I never really like took a lot of time to fully grieve it.
And I love how you brought that up in the sense of depending. I mean, your mom passed away 20 years ago. which is a huge milestone. And I'm sure it feels like in some ways a long time and a short time.
Of course. Of course.
And back then, I remember like when my son passed away, there really wasn't a lot of support.
Yeah.
And the support that was offered was, how can we help you to get back into
Yeah.
who you
Yeah.
were and to get over it as quickly as
Right.
possible?
Right. Yeah. And also, like, like I said, I was in my 20s. And so I didn't have any peers that had the same loss. Like peers had lost grandparents or, maybe aunts and uncles, but never a parent. And it was really hard to like connect with other people um, because no one really understood. And
Mhm.
even now, yeah, like this, I mean, yeah, the 20 years mark, I mean, they still, don't really understand unless, I meet someone who's in a similar situation. But yeah,
That understands. So true.
yeah.
Now, and I personally don't like the word anniversary, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I know.
But
I'm
that's
gonna use
not,
angelversary. I like that.
that is a
Angelversary.
good one. We might use that one. Again, it's whatever word makes someone comfortable, what works for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
of course.
the wonderful thing about language is also use what works for you.
Yeah.
And so in that, because I always go, every year is a milestone because it's like, it's one of those things where it's almost like the reverse
Mm,
in the sense of the more time that goes by, it seems the more distance of
mhm.
when we remember them.
Yeah.
And so, because it is on the 20 year,
Mhm.
is there something different that you're going to be doing? And also, do you find that there are unexpected moments that surprise you,
Mm.
either of whatever feelings pop up?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think, well, one thing we did this year, which we don't always do, is the angelversary is October
According to your
19th.
plan.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's October 19th. So we ended up actually, it was just happened that the kids had, I don't know, like the Friday and the Monday off or something. So we traveled to Connecticut to be with the family. We had a like family dinner and we went to the cemetery and so it was like a really nice time to be able to do that. And yeah, it is. I mean, it's true, like you do feel, it's weird because I think part of me feels like the distance and the length of time, and then I mean, but part of me still like talks to her every day in my head, or like write in my journal or something, and wonder like what would she think, or what would she do, or what advice would she give me, or and so like I still have that connection. Like I do feel like there's been those continuing bonds that I have kept because I mean, obviously she was so important to me. And like, yeah, so it feels distant. And yeah, and like sometimes I'm just blown away by like how long it's been. I'm like, oh my God, how could it have been 20 years? How could it be that long? Like, you know, um, but because it doesn't always feel like that, but also it feels like a lifetime. So it's sort of like a weird, I guess, paradox or something, right? Like it's yeah, yeah,
It is also true. Um, and I want to thank you for being my guest and for coming
of
on and for
course.
saying yes, because and definitely when you're talking about your mom, I can see the animation
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and the love that you carry for her, and I can see it coming out and encompassing like her grandchildren.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Definitely. But I'd love for you to give a tip So you
Yeah.
can give a tip, or you can share a story of your mom that
Mm,
is pregnant, or you can do both.
mm. Okay. Well, I'll give a tip. So one of the things that I like to do around the holidays, or just even have, so, in my work at Root and Rise, I really focus on a mind body approach. So I do the coaching, but I also work with like mind body piece because, as we know, like we also grieve with our bodies. Like it is not just an emotional, mental thing, it's also physical. I mean, like any other emotion, like we feel it in our bodies. People say they feel stressed in their shoulders, or and grief is no different. So I like to incorporate some of like yoga or meditation or breathing things. And so around the holidays, like one of the suggestions that I like to give people is to have a calm down toolkit. So pulling together maybe like the box breathing, you did that. Like have a couple tools that you have, like could be box breathing, it could be some other breathing exercise, maybe some short like grounding meditations or something. Maybe have a playlist, of music that that helps you feel better. Plan to go for a walk if you can. And so like pull together this like toolkit of different things that can help you when you're really having trouble, um, get back into your body, reconnect with yourself, feel your emotions. Oh, and I just see in the chat, a grief first aid. Yeah, love it, love it. And yeah, it's just, it's just something to help support yourself, like in these, like, and especially during the holidays, because we know how challenging it can be. So yeah, that's what I like. I like to sort of have those things in my back pocket, especially around those more difficult times of the year.
Thank you so much for those tips.
Yeah, of
I
course.
do. I always feel that tips for people, they can take them or leave them. Take
Yeah, of
what
course.
works, right? It's a gift. And
Yeah,
as
yeah,
any gift, sometimes, I mean, a gift is given freely from the heart. I hope people
yeah.
receive that the way that it is
Mhm.
given, and that they try it out and see what works for them, because a lot of,
Absolutely.
right, this isn't a cure-all. And so that's what I
No,
want to caution for people, is that when
no,
you give tips, this is not something that says, because grief is not, it's not fixable, it's not curable. Uh,
no.
we walk, I use the expression, we walk with it.
Yeah, yeah. I like to say, yeah, it's something we carry. We carry it with us, right? Yeah. And you're right. Like, exactly. Those might not work for people, and everyone's playlist might be different. Someone might have classical and some might have like heavy metal, right? Like, it's always unique. But, as long as I think you're doing something to nourish yourself, whether that's like eating healthy, sleeping, or even doing activities that you feel nourished, like that kind of thing, I think is really key. Whatever that looks like for you, like to nourish yourself and take care of yourself.
Well, Jessica, it has been a pleasure and a delight. And for all my guests, I mean, we're talking about grief, which is a heavy topic. And throughout these days, we have shown what the face of grief looks like, that it is not what people perceive in the movies of grumpy people being sad constantly. Yeah, thank you, Jessica, for
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. So thank you.
glad you said yes.
Yeah. I love to meet others in the grief world. So I love to make new connections and work with others. So it's always I always try to say yes.
Well, I'm glad you did, and it's been an honor to have this conversation with you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm going to introduce my guest. Oh, Zach, did you want to say something? Oh, thought I heard. Thank you so much, Zach. And basically, Zach is live streaming for us, so on the Community Forward. And it really is, it's about community. Grief needs community. It's not something to do alone. And I should know because I did it for 10 years. By that, I do want to bring my next guest on, Liz Walsko, who is a bereaved mom, sibling, and child. She's a facilitator for the New Hampshire Compassionate Friends chapter. She's also a certified grief educator. And yes, I'm going to give kudos to David Kessler because that's where we all got certified. So as you can see, this is my tribe of people in the grief aspect, but it's because it comes from a heart-centered place and it meets people exactly where you are rather than telling you what you're supposed to be doing or should be doing. And so, Liz, I want to welcome you. And I know you and I are both in the same program, learn, public speaking. So welcome.
You. Maria, I really appreciate you asking me to do this because I've been doing grief for a very long time. My first experience with grief was when I was 19 years old. My oldest brother died in a car accident, and it really rocked my family. He was 24, my other brother was 22, I was 19, and we had a 9-year-old sister. And my parents fell apart because 51 years ago, who talked about grief? And it was the first death in our neighborhood. And it was just, and my parents struggled for almost a year. And I became my sister's caregiver because my other brother went back to college. But what happened was my mom was reading, this was in the DC area, the Washington Post one day, and found out about a new support group starting called Compassionate Friends. So my parents were some of the first people who went to Compassionate Friends here in the United States. And my mom helped out with the chapter for a while and began to heal. She and my dad healed. And my mom became an advocate also for grief. And we ended up in a journey called hospice. A friend of ours in our neighborhood was diagnosed with cancer. She had 4 kids. I helped take care of those kids for 4 years. One was 9 months old, 4 years old, 11, and 13. And she lived for 4 years. And then she decided when they couldn't do anything else because it had gone to her liver, this is back in the late 70s, she had researched hospice in England with Dame Cicely Saunders and with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And I had the honor of meeting Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and working with her for a little bit on putting this plan together. Janet went to her doctors and said, I'm going to die at home with peace and dignity. And they said, I don't think so. And she said, oh, I know so. And that's exactly how she died. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life to just see the whole thing plan out and that death can be beautiful and death can be peaceful. And so my mom and I went on to create the third hospice in this country called Montgomery Hospice. It's still a thriving hospice in Rockville, Maryland today. And they honored my mom about 5 years ago. But all that work in hospice, I trained volunteers to go sit with the dying and take care of them. And everything was going great until May of 2008, when my sister-in-law was diagnosed with cancer in January, and she had been diagnosed for a little while. So in May of 2008, she died peacefully at home, and we all were suffering because she was like a big sister to me. Little did we know that 3 months later, my only child, my 26-year-old Joanna, had pelvic surgery about three or 4 weeks before, and She woke up one Sunday morning with a swollen, painful leg and went to the hospital in her town here in New Hampshire, a little town called Keene. They didn't have an ultrasound technician on call, so they sent her home instead of keeping her until they did. 3 days later, she got up to go to the bathroom and she was gone. A month before her wedding. And to say that that rocked me was, she was my life. She was my only child. And here we had her wedding all planned and ready to go. And my mom and dad were already in an assisted living down in Virginia, and I was not about to have them come up here for the funeral. So the night of my daughter's funeral, I talked to my mom for an hour on the phone, knowing if anybody would understand, she would. We had a great conversation. Right before she hung up, she said, my sister actually had come up from Baltimore, and she was here with me still. God bless her. She spent 2 weeks taking care of me. My mom said, I don't want you guys to worry, but they're taking me to the hospital in the morning because they think they want to look at my heart. I feel fine. Okay. The next morning, my mother had a stroke. And 3 days later, she was gone, which was 10 days after my daughter. So I was in a tailspin. I didn't know what to do, I was in shock. I didn't know how to survive. But the one thing my mother said to me on the phone that night, she made me promise that I would find a Compassionate Friends group. Within a month, I did. And I walked into that room, that first meeting, looked up at the ceiling and said, okay, Mom, I'm here. Now what? I cried through the whole thing. The first several meetings, I cried most of the time. But then I started listening. And I started hearing other grieving parents talk, and how comforting that was to know that I wasn't alone, that other people were feeling the same things I was feeling. I wasn't crazy. I was actually doing what I should be doing. I was grieving. I was angry. I was beside myself, but it helped me heal in a way that I can't really say enough good things about Compassionate Friends. I was a member for 2 years, and then I became a facilitator, which I've now been a facilitator for 15 years. And it's been one of the biggest joys of my life to be able to be there for the newly bereaved and to help other grieving parents when they first come in understand it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. There's no right or wrong here. There's no good or bad. It has to be your way. And as time goes on, I learned that talking about my daughter was my way of healing. In 17 years, I've never stopped talking about her. There isn't a soul who knows me who doesn't know just about everything there is to know about my sweet Joanna. And after a while, I started looking at the blessings in my life. The biggest blessing out of this was her fiance has never walked away. He's our son. 17 years later, he's our family. And 12 years ago, he married a friend of theirs, and she's our daughter. And both her parents are gone, so she tells us, you're my only parents now, And Nathan and Haley are their names. And Joanna had 2 best friends that don't really have parents that I've known since they were teenagers. There are other kids. So my daughter left us with 4 beautiful people that come and spend every holiday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays, anniversaries with us. And I can't believe how blessed I am. And I know that's rare. I know that's not something that happens all the time. But it happened to me. But because of that, I found so much strength in the fact that these 4 people wanted to be part of my husband's and my life. They call us Mom and Dad. Not Liz and Peter, but Mom and Dad. So we don't spend all our time with them. 3 of them live here in New Hampshire. 1 lives in Florida now, my daughter's best friend. And I'm just so grateful for those people, but for my church too. I for a while I lost my faith. I'm like, how dare you take Joanna from me? And I blamed God and I yelled and I screamed until a couple years later when a new minister said to me, "Hey Liz, I'm sorry. I don't believe in a God who takes a child from a parent. I believe in a God who walks beside the parent as they heal." And that just totally turned me away around and it said to me, um, I believe the doctors took her from you, not God. It was human error, not God's error. And, we did go after him and, that got settled, but it didn't bring her back. And it was 4 years of fighting to get them to agree that they screwed up. So now I'm grateful for all of the things I've been through, but the thing I love the most to do now is to be there for other grieving people, not just grieving parents, but anybody who's grieving. I've my friends call me the grieving guru.
Well, and Liz, thank you so much for sharing. And oh my gosh, you have experienced so much loss in your life. And I know that you had said you're grateful for the other 4 people that have come into your life, which is a blessing and it's very precious. And it really is. I mean, it's mind-boggling when we hear of all the aspects of grief and loss that has happened. One of the aspects that I think sometimes we think of is that when loss happens, most people assume it's, oh, you're only going to have it once and then it's done. And that life doesn't work that way. As we see, and especially as you said for your brother, back then, I mean, even when I think our children passed away, because your daughter passed away in 2008, my son passed away in 2009, even then was still grief illiterate. Right? The world still didn't know anything and kind of expected, okay, get back to what was. Here's this little blip that happened in your life, but for the rest of us, it didn't. So now you get back to the point where you were beforehand and pretend that it never happened. And a lot of times, I mean, your mom, wow, she was a pioneer.
She sure was. She sure was.
When I hear that, because I'm thinking most people wouldn't have known what they're supposed to do and then hide. They're like, what we envisioned of the people that start hiding. That was one of my thoughts and my fears was I was going to become the person that people go, yeah, look at her. She was okay beforehand, but after her child died, I don't know what the heck happened. And that's the fear of a lot of grievers.
I think it doesn't have to be that way. If you're open and honest about what you're feeling and being willing to share your loved one. I have had friends for years who never met Joanna. And they've always said to me, God, I feel like I know her. And to me, that's the biggest compliment I could get. The biggest compliment at all is to hear that I'm telling her story enough that people get who she was. She was a sweet, caring, loving young lady who had some problems in her teenage years of not fitting in and not feeling great, but she broke through that and worked hard at it. She had the voice of an angel. She and I sang in the choir together. Took me a while, took me 15 years to go back to choir without her. But I do now. I've been back for a couple of years and I'm so glad that I am. And I know she's smiling down at me. We do lots of different rituals for her. I mean, we celebrate her birthday. It was her favorite day of the year, April 5th. She'd start planning it in January. She loved her birthday. She
Anyway.
loved birthdays. Yeah, she loved birthdays, period. And, and we make a party out of it. And the one thing she liked to do on her birthday, once she started getting older, was she liked to switch the candles on the cake to make herself look older. So we still do that. This year I was 17 instead of 71. And on the angelversary, we always do something special to remember her, but we do things special every day. Things are a little different for me. She's not, she was cremated. We have an urn. Half her ashes have been buried with my parents down in Williamsburg, Virginia, because we lived there for a few years. She adored my parents. They adored her. And she had written down, and her fiance found what her wishes. She was one of my hospice volunteers, and I made my hospice volunteers fill out this lengthy personal death awareness piece, because I felt you could not sit with a dying patient if you were uncomfortable with your own death.
Oh.
So people, if they didn't fill it out, they couldn't be a volunteer. And Nathan found hers. And in it, she said, I want to be cremated, and I want half my ashes with Mam and Mac, which is what my grandparents' name was, and the other half with Mom. So I still have her half, the half that's going to go with me. And it's in an urn up in our living room. It has a treble clef and sheets of music on it. It's a beautiful piece of art. And I say good morning every morning and good night every night, 17 years later. And Peter and I talk to her all the time. If he's frustrating me, I'll go, okay, Joanna, come down here and help me. We laugh. We laugh a lot because that's what she did. She had the best giggle in the whole world. And I decided I wasn't going to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I've been through too much in my life to have this destroy me. Instead, I decided to give me a new life. And my life before August 6th, 2008 is totally different than it was after. But I have found peace. I find joy again. Took a long time, but it is possible. And that's what, when I give talks, that's what I talk about. I talk about how I chose to not hide my grief and not hide from the world. And just be honest. If I'm having a Joanna moment, I have it. And people who know me go, Liz is having a Joanna moment. Peter says to me, if I'm listening to a song and it gets me, he goes, having a Joanna moment? I'm like, mm-hmm. He goes, good. He has them too, even though he was her stepdad, but much more of a dad to her than her own dad, who, by the way, died 8 months before she did from prostate cancer. She took 3 months off from her job without pay to care for him and heal her relationship with him. And here's the most bizarre part of the whole story. She died on his birthday. You think that didn't piss me off? It did. But now it's kind of a joke. They're in heaven together.
And it is when you're sharing that, it becomes poignant in the sense of when you're sharing about Joanna. I mean, I can feel her presence, and thank you, because that
Thank
is
you.
of sharing on that is to have people have that. And one of the things, and I know as you're sharing about your daughter, I'm going, as a parent, that's what we want. We want other people to share their interactions that they had with our child. I know, what was it? Someone on Facebook had put in, it's been 16 years that now he has cancer-free. I mean, I met him at the hospital. He was in the hospital the same time as my son Stefan was. And Stefan was his inspiration.
Oh, wow.
Right. At the time, he didn't know who Stefan was. He just saw this young man, you know, sort of improving or taking steps. And he didn't realize that what he saw as improvement was actually Stefan slowly dying.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Because of the thing. But my son didn't know either because we didn't tell him that he was dying. I'm one of these firm believers, don't tell people to take away their hope.
Maria, how old was he?
Stefan was 27.
Okay. So close to what Joanna was. Yeah.
But one of the things is he put down about, how he's thriving. And I am joyous for this man that he had a bone marrow transplant and it worked for him and he is thriving. And I mentioned that to him, right? That I, remember him from the hospital. And also afterwards, he came to one of my fundraisers that we had for Stefan. And that's when he shared the story. And even today afterwards on Facebook, when I messaged him and then he messaged me back, he goes, like he's joyous and happy because he remembers also. And so I think sometimes I find, and as you have like the 4 people that stay with you, when they share stories of their interaction, people are always afraid because they're thinking, it's going to bring you tears. It's tears of joy and of saying, wow, someone else remembers them. How precious is that?
So precious. I tell people, it's okay if I cry. I mean, and yes, any Joanna stories you have, I want to hear them all. I love it. I absolutely love it. But people who know me after all these years, they know that. They're not afraid of me anymore. And, there have been a few people that have lost kids, that I've known since, and I'm the first person they call. And I'm glad for that. I didn't really know anybody other than my mom when Joanna died. And I certainly couldn't call her. I could talk to her, but I had to guess at her response. I don't want to make light of anything. It's just that I've come to a point in my life where I feel hiding from grief and hiding from talking about it is more harmful than talking about it.
And I totally agree with you on that because that is one of the aspects that I think many people believe is that we need to keep silent. We need to not say anything because we don't want to make other people uncomfortable. And people around us walk on eggshells. We had another guest speak about what to say to people. And it really is. And one of the things about being supportive is asking permission and even saying, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to support you, but I care enough about you that I want to support you.
Exactly. Great thing. The other thing, talking about holidays, I remember my first holiday. I wanted it to go away because, Joanna loved Christmas and I couldn't bear to do anything. I mean, in my house at Christmas is decorated to the hilt. For 3 years, nothing. Couldn't do it. So the first Christmas, somebody suggested to my husband at work that maybe we should go someplace we'd never been before, where there were no memories. So we went to this place in Massachusetts called Foxwoods. It's kind of a gambling resort, whatever, but it has nice suites. So that's what we did. And yeah, Christmas is all around, but there were no memories of Joanna. And did we think of Joanna? Of course. But it was what we needed to do for us. So what I usually tell newly bereaved parents or newly bereaved, be selfish. Do what you need to do for you. And if you make plans to go somewhere, always have an escape route. Always have a backup plan. if you go to a party thinking you're going to be okay and you get there and you're not, make the host or hostess aware that you might have to leave. And that's, I believe, is one of the best things I heard about the holidays.
Mhm.
Do what you're comfortable with because you need to take care of yourself. And after a few years, I started relaxing a little bit and I was able to start coming back to enjoying Christmas. And we honor Joanna every Christmas morning. And now it's just Peter and me Christmas morning because we want the kids to have their own Christmas. And then we'll get together the day before, the day after. And after all these years, we really enjoy that because we can talk about Joanna and just laugh and have a good time. But again, I'm talking 17 years. This didn't happen right away.
And I'm grateful that you mentioned that, because in grief, there's a timeline, right? People like to give timelines. And I know we're more longer term grief, and even the previous guest beforehand, it's a longer term grief where we're still missing the person. And I use the word still because a lot of times people kind of figure, that's the thing that they always say. You're still there. And one of the things that I mentioned this morning that we had spoke about yesterday, which is scary to most people, is to say that we happen to be grievers for life and that it stays with us. And in some ways, when you first hear it, it feels like you just want to run away and hide because they're kind of like, no one wants this pain. And when we come to the realization is where it becomes more freedom, where we have the vulnerability to speak up, to say what we want, to no longer kind of say, yeah, I don't care what you think anymore. And if you're uncomfortable, I'm going to speak about my person. I'm going to share about my person, and I'm going to share what I need. And when we can do that and actually realize that grief walks with us, it's no longer a scary aspect.
And the saddest part of all of this is nobody goes through life without experiencing grief.
Mhm.
It's not, only a few people have to deal with this. And it's, for me, it hasn't been grief with losing Joanna and my sister-in-law and my brother and my mom and my dad too. He died about 6-7 years ago. I've had health issues where I've almost lost my life. I also went through a horrible divorce where I lost everything. My ex-husband left me with nothing. And I had to take care of Joanna. I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps and start all over again. And that was scary as hell. So, but the one thing I've learned through all of this is that the more we talk about it, the more we put it out there, which is why when Compassionate Friends offered me a scholarship to take David's course, I jumped with both feet. Because I agree, we need to get our society to turn around and be grief accepting instead of grief denying.
I love that. Grief accepting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Instead of grief denying, which most people are.
Well, I think that's what we're taught. And especially when, say, we're circling around back to the holidays,
Yes.
right? No one wants to have, we'll go back to the invitation. No one wants to have the person who they figure is going to be, oh my God, they're going to be here and they're going to be sad. And it's just going to wreck the whole party. Rather than kind of saying, what is it that you need? And allowing the person to choose to say, yes, I may come to the party. Let me see how it's going to feel. And I may leave early. Or you may surprise yourself and go, wow, I'm having a good time. I can laugh freely without judgment. Because I think that's the other aspect that puts more pressure on too, is that we kind of wonder that, okay, are we supposed to pretend what we're feeling? Or if we're generally joyous and laughing, other people then look and kind of had this judgment of, wow, they're in a better, all done, and it's clean.
Yeah. And people who know me know that I will never stop talking about Joanna. And no one has said to me, I actually can't remember anybody ever saying to me, "You're not over it yet?" And I think that's because I have been so open and showing people that I'm not afraid to show my grief, even 17 years later. I can't tell you how many times at church I burst into tears, and everybody's okay with it. They understand because she grew up in that church. I see her every time I walk in there, and it's okay. And I'm teaching my fellow parishioners that it's okay. I've given a couple talks at church, and the feedback I've gotten, which was one feedback in particular, was from a new and upcoming Episcopal minister. I'm an Episcopalian. She said to me, Liz, hearing you talk about all the stuff you've been through in your life, from anybody else, I'd feel sorry for you. But I don't. I'm impressed as hell that you are where you are right now and that you can stand up there and show that you can be joyous and hopeful and you've gone on with life, never forgetting the things that you don't want to forget.
And
I was like, wow, okay.
well, I think, and I know in some ways it's sort of like it's a compliment, and
No, it was a compliment.
It is a compliment, right?
I took it as a total compliment that I actually was able to get up there and talk and get my point across.
I think the one aspect is that I always go, and yes, it is a compliment. What I was trying to say is that a lot of times when we share as grievers, we don't share for the sympathy.
No.
Right? And I think a lot of people misunderstand the sharing aspect. It's almost like, oh, you're sharing because you want to feel sad for you. And it's like, no, I don't want anyone to feel sad for me. I want people to be okay with being able to share about my person or my experience. Because the more open we are of it, the more it naturalizes and normalizes the conversation rather than having people fearful.
Exactly. And a lot of people didn't know all these ins and outs of other things I'd been through. And I had people come up to me and go, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, listen, I have this, or I was thrilled that I let them, open up and start talking about things. So, I am forever grateful that I've been able to, watch other people grieve and realize, watching my parents, I knew what I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to be yelling and screaming at each other, of course, and which is they blamed each other. And I wasn't going to be that. I was going to honor Joanna. I was going to keep loving Joanna and honoring her. Keeping her memory alive is the most important thing. And also, because I'm never going to have grandchildren, which was the one thing I wanted more than anything, I could taste it. And I have lots of surrogate grandchildren. It's wonderful, but it's not the same. So if I don't have grandchildren to talk about, I talk about Joanna. And nobody has told me they're sick of hearing it or be quiet or, like I said, aren't you over it yet? I really think it's all in the way you're willing to approach it.
Good tip. And Zach, I know that you want to chime in.
Please.
Good choice in switching those around.
What not when you're 56? Yeah, uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, Joanna would love it. She'll smile down at you. Anybody who does that, she just loves it.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I agree. You know, again, the grieving person, if they can, needs to be honest.
Mhm. And the honesty comes from being aware and
Mm,
acknowledging where we're at,
exactly.
right? And
Yeah.
that is something, even as a griever, takes time. It doesn't come right away. Yes, we have I call them heart whispers. Some people call them the gut or, intuition. It takes a while before we kind of connect with what we want and what we need. Because especially at the beginning, in that rawness, we don't know what we want. Our emotions are jumbled.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I can remember when I was working for a hospice when Joanna died, and I took a month off and I went back to work and I was there maybe a week. And the bereavement coordinator's office was next to mine. And this one day she had a grieving family in there who just lost their 96-year-old mother. And they were sobbing and crying uncontrollably. And I wanted to pound my fists on the wall and say, "What are you crying about? I just lost my 26-year-old daughter." I didn't do it. But my boss came in the next day and I said, "I think I came back to work too soon. I was ready to kill somebody yesterday." And I was very blessed. My hospice gave me 3 months off.
Mm.
And, that's when I really dived into Compassionate Friends. And our chapter at that time had a special 10-week program for the newly bereaved. So I did that, and that really helped. So everybody has to, you know, do what works for them, but never be afraid to ask for help.
And I thank you for mentioning that, Liz, because I think a lot of times we don't make the mention of the anger that we're feeling. And I
Mm,
totally get where you were on that one, because at the beginning, yes, I would have been.
yes.
And
Yeah.
um, and also about the workplaces. I mean, these are other topics because I am going to be continuing on in having these conversations in summits in the new year. So these are different layers And I hope that the audience will join us and even send us questions of what kind of grief and loss that they're experiencing, because it
Great.
is, right? There's so many different layers. I mean, I've used the onion for so much. You would think that it was my favorite. I think it's a vegetable. And I forget it's a vegetable because use it as a staple, like garlic and onion. It's a staple, and I forget where they fall into. But that's what it's like. There are so many different nuances. And I get that each educator has their lane and their expertise. And that's who I love inviting to have these conversations on, is because as an educator, I have my expertise in mine because that is my experience. And each of my guests has their lane and their experience. And collectively, as a tribe, as a community, we share so that way it answers someone else's questions. Liz, I want to thank you for being here. I do want you to maybe leave a tip for our audience.
I think the best thing I could say to anybody who's grieving is don't be afraid to talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes. Don't hide. Reach out for help. Tell people what you need. And I know that most people can find what they need by just putting it out there.
Thank you so much, Liz, and I appreciate that you said yes to being my guest.
I appreciate you asking. I'm honored to have been here, and thanks for listening to my story. I never hesitate to share.
It's okay. As a grief coach, that's what we do. We
That's
listen.
what we do. Yep. Yep. Right.
Yes, thank you so much. So this has been conversations about grief and loss and navigating the holidays. And so to go into a more gentler, deep dive, I'm offering a masterclass workshop on December the 11th at 1 p.m. Pacific for anyone that wants to join, where I'm going to offer simple, practical tips and tools to help you navigate the boundaries of honoring yourself and your person. And this is for anyone, whether it's, as we've discussed in our conversations, you're a recent griever or it's been decades. Because the yearning, the missing, and the longing don't go away. And that's why I call it carrying love and loss in the same breath, because that's exactly what we do. And so I offer a gentle invite for anyone that wants to come, and the link will, of course, be provided. And thank you so much for all of you for being here, for listening to these conversations with my guests. And definitely, if there's anyone that spoke to you, that this is why there's a variety of guests, because grief is different, it's unique. And maybe one guest spoke more to your heart than another. That's okay. There's no right or wrong. As your grief is unique, so is the support that you need. And this is why we want you to match up to the right person that gets you. So that way you know you are not alone and someone else can say, I got ya. I thank you with all my heart and love.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Zach. I want to give kudos and gratitude for behind the scenes, for being there for these 3 days, for being that fly on the wall almost. And so I do want to put a plug forward for all the work that Zach does in the Community Forward community, because he is reaching people that need these services and maybe aren't aware of them, and aware of people that can offer support for them. Thank you.